So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to our department head now who will make the official introduction. Dr. Vogt.
Good evening, everyone. It's a real pleasure and a privilege to have you all here today. It's a great event, and I would like to take this opportunity to again thank Fidelity Investments and the technology group for sponsoring this, because we couldn't have done it without you, and it's really a success, and also Ken and his staff for organizing this, because it is a lot of work. But we also appreciate you coming, because without you, it would be no series at all. So thank you for coming. So today, it's also a very special privilege to welcome my friend and departmental friend and alumnus, Mr. Paul Jones, as the guest speaker. We are very, very proud to have him here. He has a BS in computer science. He got it in '72, but then he decided to do some very interesting things. For instance, he is currently director of iBiblio.org. He is also faculty in Chapel Hill. He's a clinical professor in the School of Journalism and Mass Communication, and a clinical professor in the School of Information and Library Sciences. And he has a lot of interest in things like social communication media. So he was one of the first people who implemented essentially email on the campus in Chapel Hill.
I borrowed it from State.
You borrowed it from State, yes. Yes.
Sam Moore.
Yeah, and this is why I'm so worried about his talk right now, because he seems like he's in the process of disowning email, so we'll see how it goes. But he has done a great thing, because he was, the Sun site, which was at UNC Chapel Hill, was one of the first worldwide websites in North America, which is a great deal. And he's the author of the book that's called the Web Server Book, and of course numerous articles and things like that. He blogs, and he speaks about these things, and he has a vision, and this is what we're going to hear today. So please help me welcome Mr. Paul Jones.
Thank you. Thanks a lot, Glenn. So thank you. I haven't tested any of this equipment, so we'll see what happens. I should say I graduated from State in '72, so as you can imagine, there actually wasn't much of a department of computer science at that time. I entered the department in '68 as the second entering class. Like, I was a freshman, and after 1 week of drawing and engineering, I knew that wasn't what I wanted to do, and became a computer person. I do want to talk about email. Oh, he's going to let me do that. That's good. Okay. This is a hashtag that we've used a lot on Twitter and other places for people that are trying to figure out how to live without email. In other words, just live a better life. And this talk is why you could, should, and must, I'm asserting leadership, find better ways of communicating than email. And this talk will be first an indictment, a confession, and then a suggestion of some remedies. So here's the indictment right here. We heard that messaging and sharing was started on Plato. It was actually done better on Plato than it was done later. What happened with email is it was bad to start with. The first email message was a bad idea. It was sent in 1971 by Ray Tomlinson, who has since made this slide, tried to back off of what he claims the content of that first email message was. He confesses that it was just a bunch of gibberish that he sent to as many people as he could get to get email addresses. Probably QWERTY just off the top of the keyboard. He now claims that it said test, 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 as if that were any better. I should say there's a special, always a cultural underside to all of this. This particular spam can has a connection to North Carolina. In particular, it has a connection to Chapel Hill. As you might guess, Chapel Hill possibly has more spam, although this state may have more pork. Right over here is Georgia Kaiser, who lived across from the university for many years and was the wife of Kay Kaiser, who helped raise the money to build the North Carolina hospital. So just for fun. So as you know, spam has only gotten worse. Spam isn't the only reason, but 90%, and this is still true. And if you look, and as some places say when you order, you may not see our email message right away confirming this order. Look in your spam filter. And then when you do, 90% of the messages that you've gotten are spam. And I don't mean stuff that you don't want, like a cousin who sends you cat pictures that aren't funny. Let's make a distinction. Good cat pictures, good. Blurry, crappy cat pictures that you can't tell what's going on and aren't funny, not very good. Okay, so, and for me this has changed a lot more, and we'll hear about this, but 10 years ago, even as late as 10 years ago, people were so happy when they got email. In fact, we all knew the little sound from AOL. You got mail, and we would go in, like you would sit in the restaurant and somebody would be saying, "Oh, and I heard that sound. I got mail." And they made a movie using it. It was. Now, if you made "I've got mail," it would be a horror movie. and as you see, bing, I got a message. Now I have 436 messages. That is somebody who does not use much mail, and has a very strong spam filter. And it's not that our people are so bad. It's that we're in a robot war, frankly. Most mail is not sent by humans. That 90%, humans are only marginally involved. And if you look at the syntax and language, you're sure of it. It's made to look like somebody who's not a native English speaker, but it, in fact, is a robot who pastes it together out of some sort of artificial language, fill in, to try to get around spam filters, to try to break the syntax and break the spelling in ways that will get around. So first, there are evil robots, and evil robots are the ones who send us spam. Then there are well-meaning robots that remind us of things. Your campus password will disappear in 60 days. I just changed it. Of course, it only lasts 60 days. Now it will change in 30. Now, or thank you for staying in our hotel 2.5 years ago. You laugh because it's true. We're glad you ordered from LL Bean. Actually, it was for Christmas, and I never want to hear from you again. But all those are friendly robots. They want to do good things for you. They want to invite you to conferences. They want their listservs that, in my case, I got on in the 1980s, and the software keeps moving forward, and I have no idea what mail ID I ever used to subscribe to that listserv, which I have to know to get off, and I can't find even in the header because they rewrote the header. I can say this to you guys because you all understand that part, right? When I do it in Chapel Hill, I have to softcore it a little bit. So well-meaning robots run amok. Believe it or not, of the remaining 10% of your email, in my analysis and others, 90% of your mailbox that gets through the spam filter are well-meaning robots. Then, there's even the worse. Humans that are idiots. That mean well, but don't behave well. And you've seen this forever. Somebody sends you a note. Did you get my email? They call you up. Did you get my email? And as this guy's saying, is it the pointless meeting request that you had, like announcing some general meeting that you don't care about, or confirming a meeting that you already had on your calendar that if they looked at the calendar, they would have known? Or, my favorite is the one he refers to, and I actually got one kind of like this. We're going to have a meeting about out-of-the-box thinking. Well, it fails on so many ways. One, you sent me email. Two, you're going to have a meeting. I mean, honestly, out of the box thinking, we're going to have a meeting. Now we'll be creative. I'm going to be creative by not being there. And I'll be outside somewhere. Maybe I'll be in the tub with Archimedes. So the next evil, the most evil thing out there are attachments. My favorite attachments. Attachments pretend to be something more important. The formatting is so beautiful because it's on our departmental header. My colleagues would send me Word attachments that they had typed in and picked their favorite font. Guess which? Of course! Comic Sans used unironically. I went to a talk by Fred Brooks, and all his slides were in Comic Sans. And I kept going, is he like pulling one over on us? Because he is Fred Brooks. Or is somebody like make these slides for Fred Brooks to see if he would notice? I'll just leave that to you. I've never resolved this. But nobody can deal with file transfer well, even with email. Not well at all. Luckily, there's some things on the way. There are even more ways, and I won't compete with the oatmeal because they're funnier than me. But if you really want a list of everything you hate about email, not safe for work in some states, particularly if you work for a church or someplace. But the oatmeal has the best on this, and everybody, how many people love their email? I'll explain why you do in a minute. It does not necessarily mean you're a sociopath. So here's the indictment. It's terrible. We all agree, except for a few outliers. And if we all agreed uniformly, that, of course, wouldn't be true, because these are the guys that are going to send us email that we're going to hate. So we had to have some humans involved. Here's a PDF of the map to our campus. So I confess, in the late 70s, I was at UNC, and the only email was being run in the computer science department, and I found out about it, and I went and said, this is bigger. We should be doing it some other places. And I talked to, among other people, Sam Moore here, and we wrote some code together that makes you use, so you could use a name and @ in CSU.edu. And we also did a really terrible thing, is using a period as a delimiter between first and last name, which I'm still trying to live down. It seemed like such a great idea at the time. No, we used to underscore. The standard was the period. We did the worst. Okay, so it was terrible. Oh, let me go back one here on that. It decided to be too fast. So this is the confession. I registered UNC EDU, and I had a big fight about it because general administration wanted it. And I registered it and then went, we'll try to get it back. And we had something called BitNet, which was a store and forward network between large computers, and I was a representative for that, and I wrote some code in there. This is in the days when I could write code instead of hire people and beg them to write my code. And I wrote code for lots of different systems that you have, luckily, most of you in this room never touched or never had anything to do with, and you were better people for it. Do not, when we talk about back in the day how great it was, we lie. And the other thing is I had a boss who went, this email thing won't take off. And it could be part of your job, but I don't want it to take too much time. So I used part of my time allocation to go give talks like this, I confess. And I would tell people how important it was to do email, how it would help them out, particularly administrators, such as Milad. And then I did the most bizarre thing possible. I wrote a system that would take campus email and print it out in the mail room, and it would go through campus mail and be hand-delivered. Why would anybody do something so outrageous? Because not everybody would use email, and the CIO came to me and he said, well, this email thing is pretty good. Now that you've been out like getting all these people to use it, there are all these people using it. But the big problem is now I send email to one group, and then my secretary has to type it out on departmental letterhead and send it to the people that don't do email. Can you fix that? And I went, well, you could put a little sensor in the neck of anybody who doesn't have email. And that was impractical. So instead, I wrote so everybody at the UNC campus had email associated with it, and we had and it mapped to a directory. And it would format and print in a little NCR paper with a little window, and the little window would have your address, and then hidden in there would be your message, so nobody could see it. And what we did for the printer is we just took, a stand-up printer, and I told my boss I was going to save money with this because they had these special printing impact things. All I did was take out the ribbon, and it worked. I mean, it's NCR paper. So, and for a while, this is how perverted the world was. I was a hero for a few minutes. It's really a bad world. But that world is over. Over. I'm letting it go. I don't want to go back to it. I mean, it's a kind of a laugh to think about paper mail and how innovative I was, at that moment. Innovative doing something incredibly stupid, useless. But it was time, it fixed in time, it had some sense. And there it goes. Now, email is more. Email, people have been since then, ever since I've given up, they've come to me and said, email can be fixed. I just put something around it to make it a little better. Email is the power that drives everything. And I go, no, actually, email is like a horse or an oxen, and we're entering a time of automobiles. And they go, well, you can make it look prettier, and email will still be at the center. Email will still be what does it. We know you can't do without email. And I go, well, I mean, it really is like a horse. I mean, it just leaves a stream of crap behind. Whoops. Am I not supposed to say that kind of stuff? There are 4 pillars of journalism in which I teach. They are drinking, cursing, gossip, and cynicism. And so if I do any of those things here, it's because it's professional. So, can't we just make the horse better? Can't we just make it look better? Or if not a horse, can't we get something that's sort of close to a horse and make it really work? It just needs more features. More features, and pulling it all together will help us really see the way to get ahead. We're going to go right where we're going to go. And these are from Quadrophenia, right? Anybody who's in time here. So I don't think that that's a possible solution. And if you saw the News Observer or any other talks that I've had, everybody will tell you why the horse is good and why we don't need a car. Or that we can just fix it all if we just add more stuff. And you're engineers, you know that our tendency is to add more stuff, but in reality, we know when something succeeds is when we throw away stuff. Less features, better implicated, or hidden. So this is my favorite quote if you're a creative person or a leader that's good to visit, not just because I'm attracted to new things, but our normal tendency as human beings is to hold on to the known. But what gives most creative people pleasure, every study shows, is that they're not comfortable where they are. That they need to get out of that space and they need to be somewhere new. That the old ideas that you had are good, maybe, but they're scarier than entering the new. And John Cage, famous for playing nothing, is one of my heroes about that. So I sat down one day after my total aggravation with all things email and said, there's a lot of other solutions out there that should be able to just take over all this functionality. And what I really want is I want lots of appropriate streams of communication. I'd like to be able to move seamlessly from something like IM to something like sharing and collaboratively editing a document. I'd like to show somebody a YouTube video and be able to comment interactively with them on it. I'd like to be able to manage those aggregated streams. This is the remedy part, right? We've already been through indictment and confession. So I'd like to be able to take those streams and manage them in some sort of versatile way. I'd like it to be faster. Email is too slow. You cannot even, we're emailing back and forth. Yeah, he's going to send me an email in a minute. I think I'll go make a cup of coffee. I mean, even with high-speed networks, even no matter what, email's about sitting down and typing. And people would say, forming our thoughts more fully. Actually, you form your thoughts fully by interactivity with others. Better. I want it to be mobile friendly. We'll get to data that supports this later. How many people here have a phone on which they can receive an instant message? How many people actually try to read email prefer to read email rather than instant messages, Facebook, Twitter, anything else? People love reading email on their phone, right? Those people own BlackBerries. It needs to be appropriately terse. I mean, we need to be able to state things and just get through them. And actually, we have an edge on that in being engineers because we're not all that verbal to start with. So, I lied. I'm a master of fine arts in poetry, literally. So I think conciseness has a lot of say. And it should be friendly and full of friends. By that I mean it should be whitelist. One of the biggest problems, we look at the spam problem, is you're spending all your time creating lists of stuff you hate. Wouldn't it be nicer if you invited in people that you wanted? This is what Twitter does. This is what Facebook does. This is what Google Plus does. This is what any modern communications scheme does. You invite your friends and you select them and you put them places so that you can, I don't want to say you slice and dice your friends, it sounds, but we're getting close to Halloween. So, but whitelisting and whitelists are hard to create, but not as depressing as creating blacklists. You go in, I'm going to go in my email and clean it up. Mark as spam, mark as spam, mark as spam, mark as spam, mark as spam. The level of negativity is too high. Just don't ever let me see spam. I'll only want to see my friends, even if they are, as they often are, a Nigerian prince. Such a deal for me. Young Ukrainian girls. And who else wants to see? People want to sell me watches. So, and no attachments. I don't want attachments because attachments do not let you collaborate. I want collaboration, as you might have guessed, and interactivity. I don't want, as one of my colleagues said, here's a paper I just wrote. Could you make notes on it and send it back? It's a PDF. No, I cannot. Actually, Adobe lets you do some of that if you pay them a lot of money. And some universities, one of which I belong to, has paid too much money for that. But there's no reason for it, because I went, why did you just pay for that? Why didn't you just use Google Docs? Well, like we have a university license that we negotiate for more than my salary, which, by the way, is public record. They even make it funnier. So, no attachments, none, none, none. And you may know that certain religions are prescient. The Buddha said, no attachments. I know what he was talking about. He was anticipating. He was anticipating, because he is timeless and universal. Oh yeah, work. Okay, so let's see how, luckily the world, this is not just a pipe dream where I get up like at a TED Talk and say we're going to do this, and then 5 years later I've done a lot of talks. So the trends are working in our favor so that you will not have to use email eventually. And we can see, even though email is by far the most used activity, and by the way, the most hated, people are perfectly happy to use a search engine. They don't feel hate towards that. They're perfectly happy to read news. They don't feel hate towards that. The sentiment analysis for email is, you could, but once the Pew people started tracking social networking, we see it going right up here. And the social networking sites all include exactly the same kind of facilities that I'm talking about. They aren't integrated well. They aren't presented well. This is good news to computer science majors, because those are problems that you can solve and make the world better. And they're being solved right now. People are working on them. Even that, you're getting some guidelines there, because, and this is a decline of web-based email. Less people are reading email on their desk, and more people, to the extent that they're using it at all, are doing it more mobile. And the people under 25, but this is 12 to 17, 59% decline as they move to mobile and move to texting. This past year, there was an additional 30-some% decline in under 25s in use of email at desk. More, but a giant rise in interactive messaging, all kinds. So, and in fact, just for fun, do y'all have a required email address at UNC? I mean, I know where I am. I went to state for 4 years, and that's all it took to be able to teach for 30 years at Carolina. But now you're here, getting smarter. So I came over here to get smarter, and I already loved it right there. So at UNC, when I started asking the freshmen, we have a required email address that you can't forward for some reason, because that way it's really super secure. And that way they can send you things like your library books overdue. And nobody will sniff it, because it's like stayed on the campus. And what happens is, I teach freshmen, and I ask them, how many people have shared your password for campus email with other people? A quarter of the class has given it to their parents. I went, why would you do that? They go, oh, I still get my mail at Sparkly Unicorn 17. I had that in junior high. The only thing that comes to my UNC address are bills, overdue library books, and about my scholarship, if they have them. So the email is used to get stuff from the man. And that's all it's used for, and they only want it for the man. And in fact, my rather informal study, which actually matches exactly with the Pew's, is people under 16 don't even know what it is. It's what my grandmother sends me when she wants to Skype with me. She says, can you Skype at such and such a time? The 16 to 25s, just like that thing, all the stories, when they interview them, when you do ethnography on it, they go, oh yeah, we do it to talk to the man. When I talk to people under 35, they're going, my boss makes me use it. But they're all texting their little buddies, even at work in the background. They're going, yeah, like we can't send mail outside the network at our business, so we just use text. Because they can't block, they'll block that, right? So like bad security people. So under 50, they all want to be the man. They say, God, I wish I could quit, but my boss, and then when I do that, I've got to manage these people, and how am I going to change their brains? Well, possibly try leadership, the topic of this exact talk. So, and then the worst people are my own demographic. I am the man, how could I possibly do without email? In fact, I should say, and then over 70, it cycles back around. When I went to tell one of my deans that I was going to do this project, we kind of had this little talk, and this particular person, since they're different genders, I shouldn't say which, looked at me and said, he's very good. All right. The Socratic method stuff started happening, like to help me be smarter about my stuff. He would ask me insulting questions to see if I was on top of it. And I was for a while, and he went, but what will you do about our important messages on our departmental listserv? And I accidentally laughed out loud. But I solved that problem. All right. So once you get there, I want to look at other pioneers to look to. And you guys all know who this guy is, right? You all bought his book, Fundamental Algorithms. Knuth has not used email in a very, very long time because he wants to think deep thoughts. However, his secretary reads them all for him. This is not the model. This is not the model to shift it off on somebody else and claim that you have to do deep thoughts and some other poor soul has to sweep up after you. We're all about individual autonomy, right? Yeah. And especially if you're doing a startup, you're not going to do him. Okay, more like this guy. Luis Suarez, he's now up to 5, he's having his 5th year anniversary, no corporate email at IBM, only social. Luis lives in the Canary Islands because he used to live in Spain. He realized he could live anywhere because he finally got good connectivity in the Canaries. He went, why should I be in Barcelona when I could be like, in Gran Canaria? Seems good to me. They have an airport. All right. Luis is great and a really good advocate for social engagement of knowledge and of knowledge management. Because one of the things that happens, which I don't have a slide for, but I will share the secret with you. Are you ready? One of the things that happens with email is you don't actually share any knowledge. It all goes into little sinks in your personal inbox, which you usually forget about, that nobody else can get to. You're hoarding. And one of the things about knowledge and information is hoarding makes it not grow, but diminish. One of those things that the more you share and the more you put it out, the better it is. So sharing things socially and in the open, even on something as primitive as forums, makes your knowledge greater, and your institutional knowledge much greater because you can do different kinds of knowledge management things with it. This is one of the ways that works. The other thing is email culturally and socially is used in ways that stifle cooperation. Most corporate emails or institutional emails are about the CC. CCing your boss. CCing the person under you. I'm just staying in touch. I'm just staying in touch. Xformix, which is a Dutch company that makes, I'll have to confess, activity stream management systems and applications, so they're not probably the best. They quit doing email. The people who reduced their email the quickest were management. Why? Because all their underlings weren't saying, here's what I did, here's what I did, here's what I did. I did this too. So-and-so won't do this with me anymore. So-and-so's acting bad. So instead of resolving it like they run to mama, and your mama's probably told you at one time, you guys quit fighting, just settle among yourselves, and whoever comes out alive, they're right. I'm from a large family. That was our parenting style. Luis is a great example. You should look him up, El Swa. And now I'd like to talk briefly about 2 or 3 things that are out there doing messaging right in ways that help. This is one of the early examples of how Facebook messaging wants to grow. It wants to tell you where people are near you. It wants to let you be able to address those people right away. It wants you to be able to ad hoc or organize, make your own smart mob without saying, who's in the Bay Area and wants to come close? You can say, who are my friends that are right here? And there you go. It's terse, and notice it fits on your phone. Oh, my. Okay. So it's, when I first started this, I started this like a month and a half before Google Plus was announced. And I read the specs for Google Plus when it came out. Actually, I didn't read it because how does Google present its stuff? Videos, right? Because, it owns YouTube. Why not? So the second most used search engine in the world. What's the first? Oh, that's right, the third. Google is the other one. Baidu is by far the larger used. So G Plus looked like it was going to solve everything, but it's so whitelisted I don't have many friends. And it does a really good job of integration, a sort of confusing way of letting you direct messaging, a great way of interacting with people and then saying, let's just do a video hangout together, let's do it that way, let's share a YouTube video, let's share a screen, let's do any of these kind of techniques. Lets you do that. I'm going to move a little quicker. IBM has a great white paper on using social to replace email, at least internally, and externally, and they have a consulting group that helps you do this, which Elsewhere is on. Now I'd like to talk about the people that liked email over there. I tried to make it more negative in my statement over here. Instead of saying these are the people that like email, these are the people that hate no email. The double negative that makes it twice as strong. So the first are people that are secretaries or administrators, people that spend their life in front of the computer. And I've been that person at one time in which I had to spend my life at the keyboard, not mobile, not moving around, and not productive, waiting for things to happen and reacting to them. And I have a special place in my heart for people that do that, and they always write me, and their work life is ruled by email. That doesn't mean outside of work they don't behave better or have a better cut, but I mean, it's a sad situation, really. And I try in every way I can as somebody to do that to accommodate those people in any way. So they'll say, I can't possibly do with this. Can I print it out and put it in your cubby? I'll go, oh yeah, sure. Because I would rather them convince them and then like a little bit later they go, oh, I can IM you. Yeah, that's right. Works really good. Oh, your calendar's on Google+. I could have just scheduled it there. Yeah, that's right. So just kind of a motion thing there. The other is the people who've been the most vehement to me, the worst commenters on the News and Observer, the worst, like I did a little TV thing and this one guy trolled me. And he trolled me with a friend of mine's name for a while. A real shipping. Oops. 4 pillars of journalism. Drinking, gossip, cynicism, and cursing. Okay. And this guy, it turns out, was an email marketer. How could he possibly not have a clear way of looking at the problem? He makes his money on that. Interestingly enough, another guy who was in email marketing said, I have this email marketing company. I think I'm going to sell it pretty soon because this is played out. And he did. And the other is people over 50. And I actually had one guy who, we reconnected after high school. We hadn't seen each other in 35 years. He's doing biotech. He's done 4 or 5 biotech startups, so I should have really been nice to this guy. And I should have really been nice to him anyway. I mean, that's just as a side. And we talked on the phone, and this was all kind of nice, and then we sent email a couple of times, and then he got my away message, which I started, and I recommend this as a recommended thing. Start 6 weeks in advance or more with a away message that says, I'm going to quit using email such and such a date, and offering your alternatives. And be nice about it. And most people are okay, except a couple who say, how can I communicate with you? You're not using email. I can bet you that there are 2 things that these people will be. Over 50 and are involved in IT using command line mode for greater than 12 years. And some people you're just not going to convince at all. It's Upton Sinclair saw when the workers didn't rise up and vote for him as the Socialist Party candidate in California. You can't, no matter how he explained it to them, they couldn't figure out that they should rise up and quit their jobs because they realized they like getting paid so much. So, but it is hard to convince somebody, an email marketer, or somebody who's heavily invested, or it's their job to manage to change that behavior. Leadership advantage. This, don't read it because you can't. And are you better than me? This is my away message, but the Prezi will be presented, or it's at tiny URL, capital NCSU, no email, lowercase. Okay, so you can have that. And there are other tools out there that help. I talk mostly about the social tools, but I deal with listservs by just subscribing to Reader or any variety of RSS thing. That's a really good way to do it. For one thing, it pulls them out of your email box, and you cannot read them. Or you can read them at the end of the week. Or you can read them when you want. And they're already sorted. Because you subscribe them in the right place. You don't have to spend your life writing email rules. How many people have written sorting rules for their email? Yeah, and it sucks, right? The only thing worse than writing, than spam, 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 is writing that you think you're getting revenge, but it's endless. It's Sisyphean. Okay, if you do trouble tickets, Get Satisfaction is probably the best of this, if you've seen. Solving your customers' problems in the open. People start saying, hey, I've got the same problem. You know you really need to get on it. And it's not the only one. There's an MIT project that does something similar that's open source. Just in the last year, I must have seen a dozen Silicon Valley startups on Get Satisfaction. They have no help desk. They have one person, they say, if it gets more than 5 complaints, get it now. If it gets less than that, you prioritize them like that. Doodle for arranging meetings. Google Docs are a great way for collaboration. You have that here at NC State. Is that true? Yes. All praise Google. It's not SharePoint. Does it wrong. Okay. You don't have to log in anymore to most sites if you have a Google ID, a Facebook ID, or Twitter, or OpenID. So most of that's taken care of. It may look like it's an email address, but it's not really an email address. It's just like, Jones no longer means son of John. Jones at unc.edu does not mean I need email. Okay. Also multiple browser tabs if you have trouble keeping up. That's it. This is 4 pillars that are not drinking, smoking, cursing, and gossip. These are 4 things that influence the technology at the middle that we often as engineers don't consider. I'm going to try to get through this fairly quick. One is the power of authority, which is often legal. You have to do this because some legislature decided, or because your boss told you so. And that is very hard to overrule. You can convince people to move on that, as I've often done by generally misunderstanding what they tell me. Paul, you can't do this project because we don't have any money for it. I understood that to mean I should go raise money and ask Sun Microsystems to give it to me. And they did. I came back and said, okay, I've solved the money problem. And then the next one was, well, Paul, that's a really great idea, but no one in this department has ever done that. And I went, oh, that must mean I need to be in another department. If I'm so autistic, I don't get no. I just go, oh, well, this is, I should just do this. It's like, but there's a way. The other is all the people you want to talk with. If your friends are not on Google+, and they aren't going to get there, or the people that you have to address as your customers, or the people in your collaboration group. You can convince them over, but they're going to exert a strong pressure on this. This kind of political economy is, and social pressure is very, very strong. It's the one that makes you say, all the men my age are getting haircuts. Maybe I should. Tattoos don't look too bad. And you go get one, yeah. So not me, don't worry. Okay, so my wife is back there wondering if I have one somewhere. I'm not, I'm a good person. Okay, the other is your own, the thing in yourself. I don't have time to learn anything new. I really like command line. What is this GUI interface stuff about anyway? I just make it big and the text takes up the whole screen. I like it that way. I like green light on black. It has a certain feel to it. And the last is the power of the stuff there. You have a limits to the technology. So you're, a friend of mine used the first portable phone on a television show. They invited him on a talk show, and they thought they were inviting this rock and roll star, right? And instead, he came out with this suitcase and this big handset. And he sat down and proceeded to call up different people that he knew in the music business. Now you don't have to do that anymore, right? Because it fits right here. But it took a while to get here. And now you've got to deal with the restraints that are in that area. So much for the power of stuff. And between those four things, there's the latest, this, Biblio P. Jones blog, that'll get you. Okay. What? Because cat pictures are very important. Okay, so where I think I've left you is the bad places, the place where the Onion version of the Google Talk does. I have great ideas. You guys could fix it. But I hope I've succeeded in indicting email, something that is bad, needs to be fixed, vanquished, and cannot just have stuff wrapped around it, no matter how beautiful and how streamlined they look. That you can't just cobble stuff onto it and make it the road any smoother or better. That I confess that I was part of the problem for about 30 years. I want to get out of that. Almost exactly the same time I was at Carolina. Still there. Okay. And that finally, that we're seeing the parts that at least describe what needs to be done to fix the problem, and we see those pieces arising now. The real problem that faces us is how do we integrate those activity streams in meaningful ways and to let people do that. And whoever does that will rule the world. Suggestions, comments, or questions? Don't send email. Yeah.
Okay, so the good thing about the email is that it's open. So anyone having an address can be reached by anyone. So right now for social messaging, have to be signed on to either Facebook or Google Plus. So you're signing with some.
And you don't sign on somewhere for email?
You do, but then
Stop.
you're not answering the question.
No, I see what you're saying because I've spent actually the other thing I've spent most of my life on is open protocols and open systems. And I really believe in that a lot. And I see it in the operating system range, we've been very, very, very successful in that. And in the packet switching range, we've been very, very, very successful in that. And some of those have actually aged well. IP, for example. However, RFC 822, it was invented for a relaying mail system. And the protocols, even when they've been fixed to make them better, are not better. They're still not doing this. There are open protocols for IM, Jabber, for example. You just have to deal with the other three parts of the problem. So, in fact, Google Gtalk is Jabber. Yeah.
Something that came up earlier was
So Google Wave came and it sucked. Is that the brief part of this? You're right. It came and it sucked. However, given that, I'm just trying to make this guy earn money back here. Wave, I think Wave was too early. And everybody who's sitting out there watching this stuff is going, if somebody ever does Wave right, so that it doesn't immediately start oversharing. That's what happened, right? You signed up and then it was like, don't forget, I wanted activity streams, but I also wanted easy management of activity streams was number 2. What happened with Wave? Lots of activity streams, really trying not to be a journalist here. Very bad management. So it's not integrating the activity streams isn't a problem. Doing it open like Jabber does isn't necessarily a problem. In fact, there's some open wiki code too that lets you collaborate on documents that a lot of people use, including Wikipedia, right? So it's not like openness doesn't exist. It's like people haven't chosen openness largely in those things yet. But in this case, yeah, I think what I'm talking about is right in that direction. That I've tried to describe the attributes, even though they're already expressed in software out there in all different kinds of ways, that need to be integrated into a system like Wave that can manage those activity streams and let you manage them. And you know what does it the easiest right now is notifications on my phone. Because I have all the things that I want notifying me. Here's Google Plus notifying me something. Oh, it's nice of you to be here, Jeff. Thank you. And Facebook and Twitter and whatever. And I manage the the traffic level I want on there. And I haven't even, I'm not going to all those ridiculous things that I've subscribed to, but I could by just swiping, and then it throws me into the app. So, I mean, that's actually, it's not the solution, but one more level that a year ago wasn't there. And I hope that when you guys go to work or go back to the dorm that you fix it. Because I used to fix it, and look where I left you. Bigger problems. That's why you have a job. If I'd fixed it really, hey, you guys would be at Burger King. Probably not. Because you're all too smart. Yeah. Yes.
So why do you like texting but not email? To me, they're the same, but one is harder to read.
So it's very hard to, what do you got? So this is it. I didn't show you the numbers on owning these phones, but one of the reasons that people over 50 don't like phones, and you expressed it, which is I'm proud of you, because we usually don't say this. Usually we make up all kinds of reasons, starting with email is better, text, I really don't get it. Why would anybody do that? And then it's deep thought that we want to put into it. I used to, like when I would do these email talks, people would say, you're getting rid of the deep thought that goes into the interoffice memo. Now, but what really is true is at 45, your eyes go to crap. You cannot read these things. And you go, what are those little things on that screen? I didn't do that, but I like it. And it really is, when I talked about the physical limitations up there in yourself, it's not just psychology, it's really yourself. The people over 45 really have a hard time texting because they can't read the damn thing.
I can't type on them either, but...
See, that's what I mean, there you go. So, and your teenagers, no, it's different. It's different because if not just from the technology, which he asked about, it's technologically different in the way it's delivered and the way it comes. It's whitelisted to start from in most cases, or you have some management of it. It's constructed for terseness, not for verbosity. More time is spent on getting the stuff to you and letting it be interactive than constructing a header and inspecting that header and doing this other work. So on the technical side, it's different. But culturally, it's also different. Culturally, you're more likely, because you expect fast interaction on the other end, to write something that prompts faster interaction on the other end. It's just communications theory. So this is where I get to be a journalist and mass comm guy, talking to tech people. People construct the way they do their messages based on the environment in which you're doing it. That has to do with the space, the keyboard, your head, who you think you're talking to, and the speed of interaction. So what we're able to do in talking is a lot different than what we can do in typing. That's why spoken word is really a different linguistic construct, even though we're doing the same stuff, than written word. Bad. If you just wrote down like you spoke, people would think you were an illiterate idiot. And if I read the way I think, if I spoke to you, unless I were Abraham Lincoln, in a style that was full of too many complex, hard to parse, less interactive sentences, you would, 1, go to sleep, or 2, ignore me, or 3, be confused. So that, you could argue, it's just language. But the speed, the space, the terseness, the speed of interaction, and the cultural environment in which it's embedded, as well as the technical, are heavy, heavy definers of how people use different and make those choices. So I don't mean to over-mansplain, but why not? I am a man. Okay. One more? Way back here, yes.
Everybody has an email address, but then from there they probably have an account in some other social network, but
Right.
you're never sure
Yeah.
which one and how many.
Yeah, yeah, and you're right, it's hard. And I didn't do it because it was easy. I mean, one of the things I know about me is I could have cruised around doing email until I retired. And it would all been fine, and I would have just been a grumpy person, grumping about it and talking about better days of the past. But I'm not happy doing that. I intentionally put myself in an uncomfortable one where I had to look at solutions like that. And I haven't solved that problem exactly. But it sort of happens that more people initiate to me, and I just follow up where they hit me last, and that kind of works. And I've narrowed it down. I started with I think I was so broad that I said, I made really absurd claims about how I would talk to people. I would say, Facebook, Twitter, Google+, LinkedIn, Diaspora, which I'm sorry didn't work, open source social network. I had a whole bunch of stuff, and then I went, and by the way, if you make an extra normal, if you want to collaborate on an extra normal cartoon in which you're one character and I'm the other, I'll do that. Or you can post a YouTube video and I'll do that. And then I was on a National Science Foundation grant with this guy at the Naval Intelligence, which, don't say it, okay. I can only say so much, except that he called the university research people and said, Paul Jones is uncooperative with the federal government. He requires that I send a YouTube video to communicate with him. It's true, he was angry. And I would have. It would have been okay. If he had sent me a YouTube video, I would have done it. I might have given YouTube-style comments back. Why is that funny? Never mind, because there are 4 pillars of journalism, one of which is definitely expressed at YouTube. Okay, thank you.